Well, we had another weird night in Cleveland. The Republican convention has veered off course yet again, and it played out a bit like a train wreck on stage. And it all started with the second-place finisher, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Here he is walking out on stage. About 20 minutes later, he would proceed to have methodically snubbed Donald Trump on stage in prime time at Trump's own convention. And with that, Ted Cruz ultimately got booed off stage, sort of like a villain at a wrestling match here. But with this, Ted Cruz says, okay, but he effectively steals the night from Mike Pence and from the Trump campaign. And with that, Ted Cruz rides off into the sunset, maybe with his eye on 2020 instead of 2016. Believe it or not, Ted Cruz, in a primetime speech, did not say vote for Trump. Rather, he said, vote your conscience, and the Trump delegates were furious. Take a look.
To fight for freedom, to protect our God-given rights, even of those with whom we don't agree, so that when we are old and gray.
Well, Chris Christie said it was an awful and selfish speech, but this was followed by Newt Gingrich, who did try to clean it up and say, look, when he's saying vote your conscience, what he really meant was don't vote for Hillary Clinton, vote for Donald Trump. And then after Newt Gingrich tried to do some damage control, then it was Mike Pence's big moment, and that's when Pence was able to, at least to a certain extent, redirect back and focus on Donald Trump. Take a look.
Then Donald Trump came along and started saying what practically everybody was thinking anyway, that our leaders need to be stronger. Under Donald Trump, our deals will be smarter. Our soldiers will...
And with that, it shows there is still disunity in the Republican Party, though Mike Pence gave a rousing speech. Ironically, Pence supported Ted Cruz in the Battle of Indiana, which, speaking of the Battle of Indiana, it brings us to, quite appropriately tonight, the Republican War of 2016 and the final chapter of our Trail Tales.
It's time now for Trail Tales.
The Trumpians celebrate a great victory from the Middle Atlantic through the smoldering fields of Gettysburg.
In fact, Trump is on track to win north of 50% of the vote in each of those states.
Mexico, beaten once in the loss of Texas, begins to worry.
I'm not going to pay for that wall.
Meanwhile, for General Cruz, the walls are closing in. Wounded and desperate, he joins forces with a shell-shocked lieutenant from Ohio, who had lost dozens of battles but refused to surrender.
John Kasich has decided to pull out of Indiana.
So who should your supporters vote for in Indiana?
Well, I've never told them not to vote for me. They ought to vote for me.
They were tattered and confused, and General Trump made them pay.
Called collusion, folks.
The outnumbered general from Texas needed another distraction.
I am flattered, but how can you pick a running mate after you've been mathematically eliminated? This could be the weirdest week of my life. Carly Fiorina.
She fought the good fight, but may be best remembered that week for giving America the Ballad of Carly.
We travel on the bus all day, we get to play, we get to play.
Cruz's maneuver didn't work.
The next president of the United States,
His running mate fell by his side.
Cruz was tired, and when Trump implied his great-great-grandfather knew John Wilkes Booth, he just snapped.
I tell you what I really think of Donald Trump.
General Cruz made his last stand in Indiana, delivering a blistering attack in what would be known as the Evansville Address.
This man is a pathological liar. Listen, Donald Trump is a serial philanderer, describes his battles with venereal disease as his own personal Vietnam, a caricature of a braggadocious, arrogant buffoon.
But Florida Governor Rick Scott had already helped Trump lock in the blockade, and Cruz's regiment charged into fixed bayonets.
We gave it everything we've got, but the voters chose another path.
Fate carried General Cruz to victory in 10 states. Then fate hammered him down.
Trump accepted Cruz's surrender, reconstructed his war-torn party, and set his sights on Washington.
Yeah, and so goes the closing chapter in the Republican War of 2016 in the spirit of Ken Burns. If you want to catch up on other chapters you may have missed, check out our YouTube channel. Search for Craig Patrick's Money, Power, and Politics on YouTube and subscribe at the top of the page. By the way, the delegates from Florida were very happy with the way that story ended, and they were just ecstatic on Donald Trump's big night.
I have never been more thrilled. I am just, this is probably a highlight of my life. I'm going to tear up.
Mary Tweeten is Republican grassroots all the way. She volunteers for the local office in Clearwater and can't believe she's here watching Donald Trump make history.
I think he's going to be a wonderful president. I was just floored. I'm thrilled. I know it's silly.
Barbara Hasselton got a delegate slot from St. Petersburg, and she's been going nonstop all week. How are you spending your time? What kind of things are you seeing? What kind of experiences?
They're wearing us out. There's constant, starting from the breakfast all the way through activities all day long.
Cleveland, you rock.
All of the Florida delegates voted for Trump, and most are all in for him.
I just trust him. I really do. I trust him. I think it's his time. I think it's the right time for Donald Trump for this country now.
It just melted your heart, or at least it did us.
State Party leader Blaise Ngolia says the energy you see in this arena will spread through Tampa Bay.
I think there's going to be more pent-up excitement to get back home and start the hard work to deliver this state, the state of Florida, to the Republican nominee, Mr. Trump.
We needed somebody who was going to walk in the door and not have the same cronies, the same people that they owe favors to clean America up, to clean up our political system.
And the Florida delegates also say they're very high on their VP nominee, Mike Pence.
Him nominating Mike Pence is probably the single most important thing he's ever done.
Why?
Well, you've got the entire world, hating Donald Trump, and he picks someone that has enormous respect from the Christian side, from the right. If anybody's not behind this party after today, they just need to sit down and shut up.
Okay, now please welcome Dr. Ben Carson. Let's begin, sir, with predictions what you expect Donald Trump to say tomorrow night.
Well, I expect him to begin to lay out the vision that he has for America and how he recognizes that we're completely on the wrong path. We've been led on that path by both Democrats and Republicans, and he wants to talk about fiscal responsibility. He also wants to talk about political correctness and how that's leading us to do things that really don't make sense for our people in terms of terrorism, in terms of immigration policies. And he wants to talk about, the market, trade, free market, and the agreements. He doesn't have a problem with free trade, but it has to be done in a way that's fair to the American workers.
And you speak of that one time when you were rising in the polls and he panicked. What did he do after he attacked you, and what did he say about it?
Well, the attack only lasted until, my numbers started going down, and that kind of coincided with all the terrorist activity that was going on. And then he didn't have to say anything. And he said, he admitted, he said, I didn't know what to do, because, you were sort of like taking over, and everybody else I could keep under control.
Dr. Carson, thank you for your time.
All right.
Coming up, we'll dig into something that Trump and Clinton do not say much about, but it's critical to Central Florida's economy. On this anniversary of the Apollo moon landing, see where the candidates stand in our space program and what they would change. Then we'll fact-check tonight's speeches, and Evan Axelbank will share his scorecard.
This day in history.
Okay, engine stop. We copy you down, Eagle.
July 20th, 1969, 10:56 p.m.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
We won the race to the moon. 600 million people were glued to their TV sets as Neil Armstrong walked on another world.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
President Kennedy set a bold goal that many thought impossible, and America delivered.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
It set the stage for continuing leaps into space and breakthroughs yet to come. President Nixon made the long-distance call on this defining moment of the 20th century.
This certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made. For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. Because of what you have done, the heavens have become a part of man's world. For one priceless moment in the whole history of man, all the people on this earth are truly one.
So yeah, that was a very important day for America, and the space program plays a very important part in our economy in Central Florida, from Titusville all the way through Tampa Bay. But the candidates have not said much about it. So on this anniversary of the Apollo moon landing, we drilled into what little they have said to find out where they stand and what they might change.
I wanted to be an astronaut.
NASA told Hillary Clinton that women cannot be astronauts, and she will not let NASA live that down.
NASA wrote me back and said there would not be any women astronauts, and I was just crestfallen.
When NASA changed with the times, women have since played a key role in American space travel, and Hillary Clinton does not appear to hold her rejection against NASA.
I really, really do support the space program.
When she first ran for president, Clinton called for reversing NASA's spending cuts. And this year on the campaign trail, she says exploration of space drives spin-off technology and feeds our economy. She says she does not object to partnering with commercial space ventures, but she says space research and discovery must be led by the government. She has specifically called for more mapping of asteroids as a matter of global security.
We're at the brink of all kinds of new information. Let's not back off now.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump has also praised NASA.
We're going to keep that space program going, folks. It's got to keep going.
But unlike John F. Kennedy, neither Trump nor Clinton have spelled out a specific vision of where we should go with manned space travel, and specifically when we should get there. And while Trump said he loves what space travel represents, he said he would focus more on paying for our infrastructure here at home. He said it's great that private industry is taking over the business of space.
Right now we have bigger problems, you understand that. We got to fix our potholes. You know, we don't have exactly a lot of money.
NASA got $19.3 billion this year. That accounts for around 0.5% of the federal budget. Well, Donald Trump has repeatedly said he wants to change the priorities of government, and some of those themes worked into what we heard earlier tonight. And once again, Evan Axelbank is keeping score. Evan, take it away.
Hey there, Craig. How are you? Florida was front and center tonight as the governor, attorney general, and Senator Marco Rubio addressed the convention. Florida's 29 electoral votes are essentially the ball game for the Republican Party to win the White House. But there could be some challenges in their effort to do that. Take a look. For example, George W. Bush in 2004 won the state with the help of 56% of Latino voters. In 2012, only 39% of Latinos backed Mitt Romney. And this time around, polls, early polls, yes, but polls nonetheless, of Latino voters show Donald Trump losing to Hillary Clinton with only 14% support. In the last 4 years, the percentage of Latinos in the state has gone from 16.6% to 18.2%. White voters, who traditionally support Republicans, have dropped from 66.7% to 64.5%. Now, we interviewed 3 Latino voters from Tampa who have voted for Republicans in the past, but who won't this time, fearing Trump's stance on immigration.
Who else is he going to go after? He's already stated Mexicans, and he keeps adding more to his list. And it's sad to say that means I have no secure future here in the United States. If
this country was made out of immigrants, and it's a lot of them have been here for years, then where are you going to send them to? And I'm an immigrant.
In politics, though, there's always a but. A recent Florida poll showed Donald Trump up 3, and those polled said Trump was more trustworthy than Hillary Clinton, 50 to 37%. Donald Trump is also planning a Latino voter outreach tour after the convention. For Money, Power, and Politics, I'm Evan Axelbank.
Coming up, we'll put the controversies and distractions of this week in perspective. If you think we had drama on Monday and Tuesday, you may not believe what we found. Well, Well, certainly this week we've seen far more controversies and drama and political theater in this convention than we have in recent years. But if you think what you've seen this year is different, you may not believe how these events have played out in the past. In fact, here's a look at how wild these conventions were, particularly with the rise of TV. For nearly 200 years, political conventions were private meetings where party bosses decided who would get the nominations. But the invention of television changed everything.
I'm sorry that the microphones are in your way, but they have to be where they are because I've got to be able to see what I'm doing.
In the 1940s, television news brought the conventions into our living rooms. The coverage launched politicians and journalists who covered them on the national stage. Candidates who were telegenic emerged as stars, even if they were foot soldiers for other candidates.
I hope that this convention will make Estes Kefauver's nomination unanimous. Thank you.
This era of televised conventions changed the game, and many party leaders like Adlai Stevenson did not like the changes.
Now, this idea that you can merchandise candidates for high office like breakfast cereal is, I think, the ultimate indignity.
The parties are supposed to do two things at these conventions: choose a presidential ticket and decide the party platform. That is, define what the party is and what it believes. They were always very partisan, just ask Dwight Eisenhower.
We used to talk about the Democrats like we were talking about the town drunk.
But these televised conventions also exposed serious rifts that existed in politics and in society. Truman had to fend off segregationists.
Some of the members of my own party disagree with me violently on this matter.
The conventions drew national attention to the debates that in turn drove change in Washington. As we moved into the 1960s, parties had some primaries and elected some delegates, but party bosses still had most of the voting power. In 1968, those party insiders met in Chicago and tapped Vice President Hubert Humphrey, though he didn't campaign in a single primary. He was tied to President Johnson and Vietnam. That triggered riots in the streets and outbreaks on the convention floor.
Who the hell are you? There is an awful mess in the aisle here. Fractious and disputatious, discontented, annoyed, mad at the security forces and the police here.
After that, both parties gave voters much more power to nominate their candidates. That launched the modern system of state-by-state primaries. We had a Ford-Reagan challenge in 1976, then a Carter-Kennedy face-off in 1980, but the conventions became more and more scripted over the years. But they are still critical turning points that define the parties and their candidates and often swing the elections. Coming up, we'll grade this night for Trump and roll out predictions for what Ted Cruz will do next and what Donald Trump will say tomorrow night. So this will go down as the night that Ted Cruz snubbed Donald Trump. It shows a continuing rift within the party in the very same week that the Republican Party and Trump campaign is trying to project unity. And if the Trump delegates and Cruz delegates both feel disrespected, we could have another dust-up, potentially even a walkout tomorrow night. That's what we need to watch when Donald Trump takes the stage and accepts the Republican nomination. Of course, we will break it down tomorrow night right here on Money, Power, and Politics.